Hayfield House, one of the last of the great mansions. It was built on the rolling elevations of Back Mountain near the community of Lehman in the early 1930s, and thus is relatively new. So new and so wonderfully preserved that it's about to start a second life. The Robinson family, former owners, have given Hayfield House and 45 acres of surrounding land to Penn State University for the use of the Wilkes-Barre Extension Center, and classes will begin here soon. Let's go inside now and consider the first golden age of Hayfield House. John Nesbitt Conyngham, born 1865 in Wilkes-Barre, a Yale graduate, then into the coal industry and the financial world to build a fortune. A philanthropist and tireless civic worker. His hobby, farming. His politics, Republican. Died in 1935 at the age of 69 and was buried in the Bronx, New York. Mrs. Bertha Robinson Conyngham of Wilmington, Delaware, from a family closely connected to the J.P. Morgan Empire. She married John Cunningham in 1895 and spent 70 years in the Wilkes-Barre area. She was a famous hostess in her day and active in charities and the church. Her age was her secret. Some say she lived for 99 years. Others estimate her age at 101, still others at 105. She died August 12, 1963. These are the people who designed, built, and furnished Hayfield House, a 50-room home in the center of 1,100 fertile acres. A house in which the ballroom rug cost $30,000, and the maintenance of the beautiful geranium gardens ran as high as $5,000 a year. Yes, all the figures are big when we speak of Hayfield House in the old days, but some of the small details are very interesting, too. For instance, when was the last time you ever saw a phone like this? Master's chamber, writing room, second floor service, third floor service, butler's pantry, butler's room, and garage, a 19-car garage, by the way. The switch on the left is a burglar-proof device which makes it impossible to turn off certain strategic house and yard lights. The switch on the right activates a siren on the roof which can be heard by police for a radius of 10 miles. Gold-plated bathroom fixtures, real honest-to-goodness gold. Inside cranks which control not the windows, but the shutters. A refrigerator devoted to nothing but the freezing of hundreds of ice cubes. We'll examine this fabulous home in a moment, but first, let's meet a Cunningham. We're considering the two golden ages of Hayfield House, the past and the future. And here's a gentleman who has a foot in each, John Cunningham III, who has many memories of Hayfield House, and as a member of the advisory board of Wilkes-Barre's Penn State Center, has a direct interest in the future. John, what's your relationship to the family that built Hayfield House?
Well, they were my aunt and uncle. Mrs. Cunningham was Bertha Robinson from New York City. They were a couple who made their home here at Hayfield as a year-round basis.
Mm-hmm. Hayfield House has now been given to Penn State Center. You now own the farm, is that correct?
This is correct. My aunt died a year ago last August, and at about a year later, the house was made available to Penn State, and at the same time, my brothers and I acquired the farm adjacent.
What are your plans for the future as far as the farm's concerned?
Well, we're operating the farm today as a working farm. There are hogs and beef cattle on it at present. This is quite a different concept from what my uncle had in mind at the time that he operated it, which most people remember as a real show place. His interest, he was deeply interested in agriculture, and his real field was to try to develop characteristics in the various breeds of animals that he thought would be useful and applicable to agriculture everywhere.
John, do you have any memories of Hayfield House when it was really in its prime?
Well, yes, of course I do, Phil. It was a magnificent site. Some of the people who live around the area will remember at the time that they were building the house, the excavation was done with teams of Clydesdales, draft horses that were raised down here on the farm, and they were scooping the earth out of the ground virtually by hand.
That's quite a difference from the mechanized methods of today.
I don't think it'll apply in the plans for the future for this home.
John, a great many charges have been made that Wilkes-Barre just has enough colleges. What's your answer to that?
Well, the thing that is absolutely unique about Penn State in the local picture is the fact that it offers the associate degree in various fields of engineering technology. This is not duplicated anywhere else, and the demand for it is very great.
In other words, this need is not answered by any other institution in existence at present?
Within a reasonable area, this is quite correct.
I understand you're trying to raise funds for a state college. Can you tell me how come the state does not provide funds?
Well, the state's contribution to Penn State, either the campus, the home campus, or any of its so-called community campuses, is restricted to operating funds. It is actually a support of the tuition. There are no contributions towards capital fund requirements.
So that contributions for capital expenses must come from other sources.
This is quite correct.
Are there any other Pennsylvania communities that have raised this kind of money for their colleges?
There have been several of them throughout the state. The most recent took place last year with our neighborhood city of Scranton, at which time they raised the same amount of money that we're after. And they raised it very successfully and are now working on their campus in Scranton.
Well, the Hayfield House is rather a large facility. Do you envision great expansion within the next few years as far as enrollment at Penn State Center?
Well, certainly Penn State has to move ahead and meet the requirements of the future. The particular field that the local campus works in is a field which needs expansion. There is a tremendous demand for the graduates in this type of work that is simply not being met today. It's certainly our hope that over the years this magnificent home and the 48 acres around it can be expanded to many times its present size.
Thank you very much, John. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, Phil.
Now let's look at Hayfield House room by room as time permits. This is the pantry, and it's obvious that John Cunningham planned extensive entertaining. He died about a year after completing the house, so he did not have time to entertain much. Here's a heavy steel vault for the storage of silver tableware. The kitchen itself and its hotel-sized stove. John Cunningham did well in the coal industry, and he was loyal to the fuel both for cooking and for heat. It took a ton a day to heat this home in cold weather. Now we're in the laundry room, and this stove, burning coal again, was used for heating these old flat irons, or sad irons, as they were called. A reminiscent shot. It may take you back 25 or 30 years. The basement of this old mansion is one of its most interesting areas. This is a walk-in freezer in the basement, being inspected by Edgar Knowlton, the caretaker. Edgar was here when the place was built, and he supplied much of our information. There's a high security vault here in the basement. It's entered through a heavy steel door with combination lock. Inside, there are 3 rooms. Walking through them is Jack Charest, our Director of Public Affairs. First, this zinc-lined room for the storage of furs. We're told that in its day it was literally filled with lovely furs. This room was for silver pieces and expensive china. And finally, the wine and liquor vault. Thousands of dollars worth of imported beverages were stored here. Back up to the first floor again. This lovely chandelier is in the breakfast room. The motif is Japanese, and the woodwork is lacquered in bright, gay, positive tones. These murals are hand-painted and cover the 4 walls. You'll observe that most of the furniture has been removed from the house. We'll have to imagine the past richness and grandeur. This is the ballroom, the largest room in the house. And this entire wall was carved by craftsmen in Europe and imported into this country. An authentic 17th century Dutch fireplace brought from the old country. Penn State has already been using this room for various meetings, and we'll use it now for this short interview. We're speaking now with George Bierly, the director of Wilkes-Barre's Penn State Center, and we're standing beside a chart or a map of some kind. George, would you care to explain exactly what the map is and just what it stands for?
Gladly, Phil. This is a plot plan of what our Wilkes-Barre campus might look like in 1975. It shows the 48 acres of land that, through the generosity of Mr. and Mrs. Robinson, we received with Hayfield House, which is located here, and the garage, 19-car garage. We're located in the house in the living room at this point right here. Here is the arboretum of perhaps a dozen acres that our landscape architects from University Park tell us is better than that at State College. We hope to maintain the aesthetics of the property in our conversion. All of us are very aware of the need to do this. In our first phase, for example, we will need to convert the main house, the garage, and to have 8 more classrooms. And we plan the first classroom in one of the very attractive fields near the house. This would be phase 1A. Then to meet our increasing load in the next few years, we'll need an additional classroom laboratory building here. Of course, then you need a student learning center for a new library and study halls. A fourth would be the large lecture areas. Eventually, some physical education will be included in this area. On the far side of the plot plan, we have here parking that we hope to have hidden partially in the wooded area.
Mm-hmm. Is there any time schedule on these changes, George?
Yes, we need to be relocated here this fall. We lost our lease with the school district 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So our timetable is very tight.
What is the chart over there beyond the plot plan?
Oh, yes. So this is an educational pyramid that I made showing the number of persons attending school from elementary, 1st, 9th, 12th grades, and then post-high school from the associate, baccalaureate, master's, and doctorate. Now, this would be a true pyramid except for a glaring deficiency, and that is in the associate degree level in which we work. If we were to provide, as many people suggest, 4 graduates with associate degrees for each baccalaureate degree, then we would have to increase the number of associate degree graduates by a factor of 8. This, as you see, would increase the size of the associate degree output for the needs that are so critical not only locally but throughout the nation. We, of course, are very interested and have been for 49 years in providing graduates from this area in the associate degree.
So that's your immediate goal,
yes,
right now, is to strengthen that block to make it a true pyramid.
Yes, and to continue what we have been doing and expand the offerings available in associate degrees.
Mm-hmm.
The other end of the pyramid is also deficient nationwide, and of course that's in the graduate area. And this we might in the future be able to aid with also.
Thank you very much, George.
Thank you, Phil.
We'll get on now with our tour of Hayfield House. Here's a sunroom with a beautiful vista. We're told the Cunninghams raised their own oranges and lemons on small trees in this room. This main stairway is called a floating stairs. It stands away from the wall and is attached only at the top and bottom and is made of wrought iron and mahogany. We're on the second floor now. There are 6 huge guest bedrooms with baths attached. But we'll examine only the quarters of the former owners. Just outside the master bedroom, this safe for the family jewels. The master bedroom, an immense area replete with its own fireplace and chandelier. The ladies' boudoir just off the main bedroom. Again, an individual working fireplace, thick rug, rich tapestries and lighting, hidden closet space in the paneling, and in each of the 4 corners of the room, ingenious curved doors. Beyond this door, a magnificent marbled bathroom for the mistress of the house. This is perhaps the room the visitor remembers above all the others. It is here that we find the fixtures plated with 14-karat gold. And finally, the master's dressing room, or sitting room, or exercise room, call it what you will. The floor is of heavy random width oak. The walls are paneled in walnut. In this room, the aroma of fine cigars and Napoleonic brandy still seems to hang in the air. The guest bedrooms are all off this corridor. They were plush and comfortable. Each had its own motif, but we don't have the time to visit them. Well, so much for the house itself. It's in a perfect state of repair, and an architect is now at work on plans to turn it into a college, using as few changes as possible. They're hoping to retain all the charm of Hayfield House. You'll recall I said that one of John Cunningham's hobbies was farming. Well, we're standing now in the dining hall of the house, and you notice above the fireplace a bas-relief showing the various types of livestock that John Cunningham loved so dearly. You notice the Clydesdale horse dominates the scene. And now let's go outside. From the Widow's Walk on top of the big house, we can look out across the broad acres of Hayfield Farm in the direction of the horse barns. Like the famous horses, this barn was a showplace in its day. The last of the Hayfield Clydesdales. It's a stallion kept around mostly for sentimental reasons, but also this giant animal was not sold with the other horses because he was not considered large enough to be a true specimen of the breed. The tack room. Here, just a few of the former champions. Pigs have always been raised in large numbers at Hayfield. The original John Cunningham favored Chester Whites, a fine pork-type pig. These are Yorkshires, a leaner animal famed for its bacon. John Cunningham lost his heart to these appealing little beasts. They're Sardinian donkeys, which look as though they were created by Walt Disney. They do when they're young, at any rate. This pair is elderly and pretty much retired. It's a gentle breed of donkey which makes a wonderful pet. Cunningham sold dozens of them all over the country. And now a man who can tell us more about the farm in the old days. We're speaking now with George Much, one of the few living persons who used to work for John Cunningham on the Hayfield farms. George, you came over here a good many years ago, did you not?
It was exactly 35 years today since I started work here for Mr. Cunningham.
35 years ago?
Yes, sir, 35
and
years
you
today.
Came over here from where?
Well, I was working in New York State before I came up to Pennsylvania.
But you are from, as anybody can tell from your brogue, you're from where?
I came from Scotland.
That's right.
Yes.
And what was your job here, George?
I'd taken care of the sheep and the Highland cattle and the donkeys and the deer. That was my department. That's what I had charge of.
Practically all the livestock except the horses, right?
The horses and the pigs.
George, what kind of a man was John Cunningham to work for?
Oh, he was one of the best. He never demanded you to do anything. He'd always ask if you would do it. But I always knew to do it.
And you got along with him real well, and he got along with all his employees real well, right?
Oh, yes. Mr. Cunningham was a nice man to work for, and he really loved livestock. That was his hobby, was livestock.
Did he raise it commercially, I mean, to sell on the market?
Oh, yes, yes. We had lots of people who would come in the springtime and buy lambs for Easter. So a lot of Easter lambs.
He was very interested in championship breeding, I imagine.
Oh, yes, yes. He had good stock.
And in scientific ways of running a farm.
Oh, yes, yes.
And that was George Much, who was here for a good many years, came over to this country 35 years ago to work for John Cunningham at Hayfield Farms. As George has told us, sheep are no longer raised on this farm, so these barns stand empty. Also empty are these cattle sheds. They were built to house a herd of Scotch Highland cattle. We're standing in the tack room at Hayfield Farms, and in order to more fully understand this strange breed, let's take a look at an article in this old magazine, Country Life, the issue of August 1935. It's a double-day publication, no longer in print. And here's the article in the magazine Country Life, 900 acres of Pennsylvania, the 50-year hobby of John N. Cunningham, Esquire. And here the Hayfield Farm sign, which still stands at the head of the Hayfield Farm Road. And over here, a picture of two of the Clydesdale horses, the breeding of which John Cunningham was terribly interested. A picture of the small Sardinian donkeys. And over here, the Longhorn Scotch Highland cattle, part of the only herd of these hardy animals in America at that time. John Cunningham was very interested in this breed so that he could introduce their hardier traits into the strain of American cattle. Back to the future once again, and this time we go to Penn State University and its president, Dr. Eric Walker.
Well, I guess the problem is, why do we want to develop Hayfield House into a Commonwealth campus of the Pennsylvania State University? And I think the real objective is to develop more places where we can educate students and equip them to hold jobs in the state of Pennsylvania. Now, why Luzerne County? Well, we need educational places in Luzerne County. We've been saying for 10 or 15 years now that there have got to be more educational opportunities in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And Wilkes-Barre is no different from any other part of the state. For instance, in 1960, there were about 22,000 college-age students, and now there are about 27,000. In 1961, we had about 4,200 graduates up in Luzerne County, and now we've got about 5,300. And yet, if you look at the enrollment at Penn State of students from Luzerne County, you'd find out that it has gone down in the last 2 years. Now, the enrollment in Wilkes-Barre has gone up. And it might surprise you to know that next year, even though we take 2,000 more students at Pennsylvania State University, we're going to take fewer freshmen on this campus than we took last year. And the reason is that there's so many people trying to get in at the junior and senior level. And this pressure is going to grow as the Commonwealth campuses grow and as the community colleges grow. And so if we're going to offer a real educational experience in Wilkes-Barre, we've got to find facilities, and we've got to put together something that looks like a college. And obviously we don't want to spend all of our time working in a high school. And Hayfield House seems to be a unique opportunity. Now you might also ask, why doesn't Penn State just move in there and do it itself? Well, we could, but there are lots of other communities that want us to do this. And we feel that some financial support from the local community is real evidence that the local community wants to do something. And this is why we're asking for your financial support. And we want to give the first 2 years of a 4-year college education. And we want to develop the associate degree programs, which we think are so important to the economic growth of the Wilkes-Barre area. These associate degree programs we know are wanted by the students. The graduates are wanted by the employers, and they seem to be a unique type of educational experience which we ought to develop as quickly as possible. And this is really what we intend to do in Wilkes-Barre. We've got a number of these programs. If we can get the faculty and the facilities, I know that we're going to be able to do it, and this is going to be a real successful Commonwealth campus. Thank you.
That was Dr. Eric Walker, president of Penn State University. And this is Hayfield.
And that's the Hayfield story to date. It's the story of a great estate and a great fortune. And it's only half told. The second golden age of Hayfield is about to begin. It will become the story of Penn State University at Wilkes-Barre, and we wish it well.